Hello, and what's going on? Welcome in to the Take the North podcast, along with Dan Wiederer of The Athletic. I am Mark Grote of 104.3 The Score. We got tons to talk about on the podcast, lots of good audio today as well. But Daniel, how's your Bears offseason going, man?
Man, you said 104.3 The Score, Grote, and it's still like, what? Oh, yeah, that's right. FM, running the big show now. Great to hear that. How am I doing? I think I'm doing pretty good. We are really in this little pocket of the offseason that's about to end. Next weekend, not this weekend, but the weekend following, I drive to Indianapolis for the combine, and off we go into that next portion of 2026, which starts down in Indianapolis. So it's very limited nowadays in terms of how much window there is between the end of the Super Bowl and the start of all the chaos in the offseason.
It happens fast. Within the next couple of weeks, you're going to hear a lot of people talking hardcore draft. You'll get a spurt of the draft experts. You'll hear about mock drafts and needs for the Bears and all of that, which is always an exciting time. It'll be fun at the combine to hear from Ben Johnson and hopefully Ryan Poles, and who knows who else will be speaking there. But what is going to be interesting, Dan, is to see what it's like when everybody has had the opportunity to take the full breath and maybe start to answer some of the off-season questions. And I think we've done a pretty good job discussing it so far. And I think the theme on this podcast has been that your best improvements are probably not saying that they're not going to get people from the outside. Obviously, the draft is big too, huge for the Bears, but the hiring from within, so to speak, the players that are on your roster, whether injured, whether ineffective, that they are healthy, better, and effective last year. That feels like the early theme of the offseason, as opposed to, and not ruling out, the possibility of a real splash.
I've got a couple, I guess we'd call them acronyms, that we're going to use a lot this offseason. The first one is ROI, okay? Return on investment, because we're going to talk all about these big investments the Bears have already made and making sure you get the return on them that you expected to get when you made them. That's in-house players, right? So I'm just going to be hammering this over the next 6 or 7 months, because I really do think that is the springboard to getting the Bears to the next level, is taking the players that are already here. Now, obviously, you're going to add pieces through the draft and free agency, and you're going to do things like that. But there are so many big investments that have already been made. Those need to go to the next level. That's players, that's coaches. It's the whole group, right, that needs to sort of set their sights on getting better individually and then seeing how that relates. As we talk about the combine, Grote, I'm curious about this, right? Like, that little portion of the convention center where all the podiums are, where all the coaches speak, and you can usually tell when a headliner is coming in, right? Like Andy Reid, and you're like, oh man, look at the crowd gathered around that podium. Somebody big must be coming there. Is Ben Johnson there now? Where now the crowd surrounding the podium where Ben Johnson talks becomes sort of this magnet for not only the Bears beat writers, but for all these national people and everyone else looking to take inventory on where the Bears are. That's going to be a little bit of a litmus test on how legitimate the Bears buzz is in this NFL orbit right now.
Yeah, I mean, and we're hearing the buzz. I mean, the things that I suspected would happen are starting to happen, and that is you're hearing the national talk, like people on ESPN talking about Caleb as MVP, as the Bears. I've heard one pundit say, and prominent too, and I wish I knew which one, and I don't want to just start listing names. Oh, I think it was Matt Bowen. I did say, I think Matt Bowen picked the Bears to be it. Look, these guys are asked to make these prognostications. It's the world we live in. But Matt Bowen did pick the Bears to play in the Super Bowl, and I believe
win it. He picked them to beat the Bills in the Super Bowl. And look, like Matt is grounded. Matt is measured. Matt is not one of these guys that just sits next to the spigot of the Kool-Aid jug and just drinks it, like he's funneling a beer in college. This is that one caught my attention again, because Matt is usually so grounded with his analysis and truly believes the Bears are set up to win a Super Bowl next year. So when we get him on here on this podcast, I didn't say if, when we get Matt here on this show, we're going to push him on that a little bit and see where his optimism is rooted. And obviously, I think it probably starts with the Ben Caleb union.
One of the biggest stories consistently has been, and it continues to heat up right now surrounding the Bears, is not necessarily what's going on the field, but we all know that we are in the, I hope We are in the later stages of confirming where the Bears are going to play football one of these days, whether it is Arlington Heights, whether it is Hammond, Indiana, whether it is Portage, Indiana. Wasn't there a Michigan involved somewhere along the line too? I'm having trouble.
It feels like Italy was involved at some point. It feels like Switzerland was involved at some point. Everybody's been involved at some point.
Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of people over the last 48 hours, and I also did attend what was posed as the Arlington Heights rally at the DoubleTree Hotel in Arlington Heights, which was designed to very simply, put pressure on the state of Illinois to get going. Let's get moving. You're way behind. They're in the, as it was posed to me, the state of Illinois, it's the 2-minute warning, and the Bears are down 7 right now. Like, not only do they need to score a quick touchdown, if they want to win, they need to get a 2-point conversion at the end of the game as well. So it's really reached this critical spot. And I'll just say this too, since we just mentioned Indiana, from what I understand, forget about Portage. And I know that sounds almost like duh, but I could pretty well
it's Hammond or bust, right?
It's Hammond or bust. So I can pretty well and pretty comfortably tell our audience that and as if you didn't know, because you're seeing all these offerings, and this has been happening throughout the whole process. Different towns in Illinois popping up. Now we've gone even farther downstate in Indiana. Get Portage out of your mind. Hammond is for real. And just like a little bit of the background too, for people who have no idea about this rally I'm talking about, it was designed to urge Illinois lawmakers to pass this mega projects bill in the name of building a new stadium in Arlington Heights. And they are competing with Indiana, and it's been conceded. They are leading right now. They are leading because of the fact that the Senate has already approved the bill. It still has to go to the House and the Indiana legislature. The House still has to accept it. They have until the end of the month to do so. That's when their legislative session ends.
Right.
So that could happen any day. And we know that the mayor in Indiana will be happy to get that bill and sign that bill. So they are ahead of everybody on the stadiums right now. At this meeting that I attended, there were mayors and city officials and powerful business owners from several towns, a handful of towns in the northwest suburbs. Obviously, Arlington Heights, Rolling Meadows was represented by multiple people. Palatine represented by multiple people. Itasca represented by multiple people, and probably more. I'm probably missing some towns that several of these city representatives did address the crowd. Two things stood out to me, Dan. There was a lot. It's an hour-and-a-half program, lots of speakers, so you have to kind of filter through some of it. Two things that I learned from that was thematic throughout all of those speakers was one thing they said was, it's all of us against Indiana. Illinois versus Indiana, the way they put that, and they pitted it, right? Because that pisses people. Oh, wait a minute. Illinois against Indiana. Right? Like I thought that was interesting. Like that. And there's that, Dan. And what was persistent from everybody, they're scared. They're scared. The Indiana is a real option, according to them.
By the way, just so you know, Illinois plays Indiana in college basketball on Sunday. So this is a true Illinois versus Indiana matchup that pairs up with what you're talking about here. This is very interesting to me, and I want to hear a little bit more from you about
I got more.
The vibes you got inside that rally there, because what it really does amount to a pretty high stakes game of chicken right now. And you represented the timeline very well there with the idea that the Indiana state legislative session ends in a couple of weeks here, and it's done for the year at that point.
They're going to pass that bill.
Well, so like the some of the vibes I get is that they've obviously got the support in the Senate in Indiana. They've got the support of the governor, but there's people in the House that are saying, well, we don't really want to pass this unless the Bears are super serious. And so that's where the game of chicken comes in, where it's like, are the Bears super serious? Are they really, really going to do this? Because if you are in Illinois government and you're the governor or you're a representative downstate, you're saying, wait, why are you rushing us? Like, why do I need to rush to do this? And so the card you play if you're the Bears is, well, we've got a bird in the hand in Indiana. Do you? We don't know yet, right? Like that bill has not passed. And until that bill passes and until the Bears sort of decide to channel their momentum in that direction, Illinois can sort of be in this game of chicken and figure out how long they want to stay in this game of chicken. As you know how games of chicken work. We do it in the press room every once in a while. We just square up and just decide who's going to run into each other first. But yeah, tell me a little bit more about the vibe you got in Arlington Heights, because I think that all marries together.
Well, that's perfect that you brought that up, because after the official program, I stuck around and met some people, and I spoke to one, I'll just say, Northwest suburban representative off to the side. And I was like, what's could the Bears, like, lay it on here? Could the Bears actually seriously, the Chicago Bears, end up in Indiana? And what I was told by this person was that George McCaskey, chairman of the Bears, owner of the Bears, does not want to lose this press conference. As in, according to this source, there is no way in hell the Bears would move to Indiana, because there's no way George McCaskey would want on his watch the Chicago Bears to move to Indiana. So there is that he wouldn't want that heat. And this person who told me that was very confident in that. But from what I understand, the Bears were never going to flirt with Indiana unless they were serious about going to Indiana, Dan.
I agree with you. And so here we are, right? Like, we're trying to read body language. We're trying to read tone of voice, because I think the only reason that the Bears started the dalliance with Indiana was because Illinois had been so unserious about moving things forward. You know, how many delay of game penalties did they take before getting to the line of scrimmage to even run the first play? And so you've got this situation here where the Bears, by necessity, had to go find another option. Now, there's a difference between flirting with the girl across the bar and then leaving with her, right? I can be like, you know what? She's my new girlfriend, damn it. And so,
you got to finish.
This is it's an interesting scenario. And so, like, this timeline is fascinating, because if we get to the end of February and there's resistance in the Indiana House of Representatives and saying, we don't really think they're serious, like, let's not waste our time with getting this bill passed. Well, now all of a sudden the Bears are back at square one on March 3rd going, what just happened here? And now we've still got to do the same thing within our Illinois government. But it's a gamble, right? Like, it's a gamble for the Illinois legislature to feel like that is possible, like it is really this game of chicken. And so, again, it's February 13th as we're recording this. The end of the month is barely 15 days away, and so now we've got to kind of sit back and see what develops and see what Illinois has to do. Again, we talked about this last week on the show. The primary things, the two boxes that the Bears really need to check are the aforementioned pilot legislation, that mega projects bill that you mentioned, about just getting some property tax clarity, from the local municipalities, and then the aid and infrastructure. And the aid and infrastructure is done with all big projects. And I think that you see things flying around on social media, and I definitely respond to this if you got any vibe from the rally that you were at, about like, why am I as a taxpayer gonna fund this Bears stadium? And it's like, well, like the people that are shouting that, what exactly are you specifically referring to? Because the Bears are going to pay. They've promised to pay for the entire stadium themselves.
To build, though.
They're just looking for some property tax lenience, I guess, on, again, not for the entire 326 acres at Arlington Heights, just where the stadium and the parking are, and then the infrastructure stuff. And so, like, I get the argument and I get the pushback. Like, I don't want to spend my tax dollars on helping the Bears get richer. But until there's clarity on where your tax dollars are coming from, I just need more specifics on those concerns, because people scream those. And then when you push back at them and like, how specifically do you think this is going to cost you? Nobody has an answer.
Yeah, no, that's such a great point too. And I am very sensitive to that as well, as a Chicago resident, as an Illinois resident. This can hit us all. And I know that some people are more capable of affording higher taxes than others. So I'm certainly sensitive to all of that. But the fact of the matter is that the Bears simply the state of Illinois simply did not believe, or at least I don't think they believed, that the Bears were going to come up with another option, which led them to kind of being a little bit laissez-faire about it, a little bit cocky about it, until it became real that the Bears could conceivably move to Hammond, Indiana. The infrastructure part, like you said, I think that we're pretty in a good place with that. I think from all different parties, like even from the state of Illinois, I think they understand the infrastructure part. It's the property tax certainty that they're coming undone a little bit about. And I guess this would probably be a good time to play that part, to play the state side, so to speak. We had Cam Buckner of the Illinois House of Representatives on the score recently. It was on Spiegel and Holmes on the score. He is of the 26th district, represents downtown Chicago, Gold Coast, Hyde Park, Bronzeville. He is of Chicago. And he talked specifically on the Bears at the moment, not having certainty when it comes to the property tax. And here's what the state essentially is saying about that. Here's Cam Buckner.
You look at a mega project this size, what the Bears are asking for is to be able to know up front what they're going to pay every year in property tax. What I've said from the beginning is that while that is not, immediate money or a check from the government to the Bears, there has to be conversations about what that looks like. How much is the property tax break? What are they going to negotiate? And the reason that the state has some skin in the game on that is because if for some reason the property tax relief is so big that the village of Arlington Heights ends up coming back to the state of Illinois to help them backfill the coffers for things like schools and police and fire, then we missed an opportunity to have a robust conversation. So for me, I understand property tax certainty. I understand why you would desire that in a stadium conversation. And I respect what the Bears are asking for that. And I think they also, at this point, I respect that we have to be prudent when it comes to how all of these things work out for the broader economic picture.
I think some of that's fair right there from, again, Representative Buckner of the Illinois House of Reps, that you don't want that, because that has happened in this state and other states where if the break is too big, as he said, you backfill those coffers and then other schools, police, fire, and those entities are hurt to go along with the citizens. So it's due diligence. I get it, but that's what
yeah. No doubt. And the due diligence is absolutely necessary, and it has to be done. But here's what I would say. I think the Bears are paying a little bit less than $4 million annually right now on the vacant property. Their tax bill promises, even with the tax leniency and the tax certainty that they're seeking, it will more than double, almost triple likely, in terms of the property tax that will be being funneled into the system, right? That will be 2 or 3 times more than what the state is currently getting if they agree to this. And so I'm just trying to figure out where this deficit is going to come from when you're talking about, $6 million a year more that's going to be going into your tax if they're given the opportunity to negotiate with the municipalities out there. So that's where, like, I get it. You don't want Arlington Heights to come to you years down the road and be like, we need more money for schools. What's the likelihood of that? And how are these conversations going that you don't have clarity on the likelihood of that, knowing that this particular project would create more tax than you're currently getting with a vacant property sitting dormant there over, by Route 53 and Euclid.
Yeah, right. And look, we would want some transparency too on what it would mean once they negotiate their tax rates, but that's a good point by you. The the brass tax question, if you will. The brass tax is, okay, what state of Illinois, what do you want? What needs to be done? What do you still need to hear to make this real instead of something that we are forever talking about it? Here's more from Cam Buckner with the question.
Are there any things that you feel comfortable saying publicly that you still have concerns about to get this thing across the goal line?
I've not been shy about the fact that I represent the city of Chicago. I live in the city of Chicago. I frankly believe that there are conversations that need to be had, not necessarily just about whether or not there's still a Hail Mary chance for the city, but for the financial posture that the city is going to be left in if the Bears end up in the suburbs, right? There has to be a conversation about how we move forward from a financial standpoint and making sure that the taxpayers that I really do think, at least in the 2002 deal, don't continue to get police moving forward. And so for me, that is important. And as we look at the entire economic outlook of the state, we got to do the smart thing to make sure that we're not making a bad deal for the people who live here in Illinois.
Yeah, and Cam Buckner again on the score. And when he talks about the 2003, I assume he's talking about the $500 million outstanding public debt from the 2003 renovation, which right now is covered by hotel taxes. And I know that that's third in line, fourth in line, but that is part of this as well, the negotiating of the outstanding debt for the renovations of Soldier Field that exists now.
Yeah, we'll see what direction it all goes. I think obviously anyone who's frustrated, and justifiably so, at how long this whole thing is taken, you and I have talked about it many times, that we're coming up on 5 years of the point where the Bears put the bid in on the property at Arlington Heights. Should remember that the Bears put that bid in on that property without any sort of advanced understanding of what the obstacle course that they were entering was. And like that to me is the thing that is sort of the lingering headache, where you're like, man, like, how did you not anticipate all of this, or at least a good chunk of this, when you decided to make such a massive move to invest $200 million on a property that you wanted to move your football team to, right? Like there just seems like that step was taken without, to use your phrase from a minute ago, the due diligence needed to set up a roadmap, right? Like, how do we get from here to there? It's like, we'll figure it out. And well, it's taken a lot longer to figure it out.
Right. And some of that comes with the hiring of Kevin Warren, who comes in and probably was like, oh, you bought this property already in Arlington Heights, and now let's see what we can do to make it better and sweeter for us through the state. And the state all along was just like, yeah, until Indiana. So we shall see, Dan. I don't have any great information on how fast things will happen, but you just look at the date as we're recording this. The date is what is the date today? It's the 13th.
February 13th.
It's Friday the 13th. Oh my God, Dan! I just realized that.
It's Friday the 13th and the day before Valentine's Day. A lot of things colliding here.
Oh my God, Dan, what's your best, how did you pick up your wife? Did you give her, was there a line involved? Was it a blind date? Was it online?
This is not for this podcast.
Was it at Cam's? Where was it?
Too long of a story, but too long of a story.
Okay. All right.
We're going to save that for another day.
Never mind your beautiful wife. What about, have you ever used a cheesy pickup line in your life?
Oh God, 1005, right? Like successfully? No, I mean, the batting average is probably like 0.86, 086 rather. If it was 0.86,
that's all right.
I'd be hitting for average.
I was about a 235 hitter. That's not bad. That's not bad.
Yeah. No natural segue from that, but I was going to ask you, what did you sense a huge turnout the other night at the DoubleTree?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it was a pretty big turnout. As I arrived at the DoubleTree in Arlington Heights, there was a group of men outside with signs chanting, things about the Bears and keeping the Bears here. There was a picture of Walter Payton. Like, what would Walter Payton be thinking if the Bears moved to Indiana? So there was this, and there was almost more of, at least on the outside, an anti-Indiana sentiment, as opposed to just, we love Illinois and we love Arlington Heights. It's like, you can't imagine doing something like that. It was a packed house in the convention room that they did use for this meeting. And it was actually well done, because honestly, like, I thought it was going to be long and boring. I thought I'll be honest with you. I thought that it was going to just be filled with, like plaudits and everybody's great and let's introduce this person. But everybody was very succinct with their speeches. And like I said, the main themes to come out of it was, it's us against Indiana, and they are scared. They are scared that Indiana is a real option because of the fact that Illinois is so far behind. But they kept the program moving. And I guess I was pleasantly surprised with it, Dan. It didn't feel like, I kept on joking around on the radio that it's a pep rally and everybody's going to be clapping and chanting and applauding everything. It wasn't like that. It was all business, and there was a sense of humility almost from Arlington Heights in that they feel like they're behind and they might just be losing to Indiana right now. I don't think they think they're going to lose. I don't think they think they're going to lose necessarily, but they are taking Indiana very seriously.
Yeah, that's as they should, and this month will give us more clarity on that. That property is so big at Arlington Heights. When you think about the possibility of imagining what you could put in that giant footprint there, it's really stimulating creativity. And so, and obviously, I think you and I will both love the day that there is a shovel in the ground somewhere.
No doubt. By the way, I don't know if you heard this or not, Dan, but I suggested that since, we've been outed with the Take the North title to our podcast because the Bears took the North, I think Shovels in the Ground should be the new name of the podcast until there are shovels in the ground, and then we will move on to the next title.
I think that might be a spin-off pod. We can work on that. Now, look, like we're taking on big, heavy lifts now. We're going to have a spin-off pod that's just purely stadium related, and we'll go that route.
Take the North tree. We've got a tree. That's what we've got. Let's delve into a few of let's do if we can, would you like to do a mini listen to this edition of the podcast here? Because we could do such things in the off season, I feel like.
Who am I to push back on such a suggestion here on February 13th?
It's Friday the 13th, and you guys are all very lucky here. It is time for a little bit of listen to this. We've got cuts from Kurt Warner, James Big Cat Williams, and George McCaskey. Dan, I want you to start, though, with Kurt Warner. Something caught your ear from CW, Kurt Warner, a regular guest on 104.3 The Score on Spiegel and Holmes. What set us up on Kurt Warner and what you heard that we are about to hear here on Take the North? Oh, yeah, KW. Thank you. Yeah, I did say CW.
Hall of Fame quarterback Kurt Warner obviously joins Spiegel and Holmes every Monday. He's been doing that for several years, and if you don't get smarter about the quarterback position during those segments, you're not listening closely enough. And so this was the last one of this season. Obviously, Kurt was a keen observer of the Super Bowl between the Patriots featuring second-year quarterback Drake May and the Seahawks and Sam Darnold. And so there was some conversation had about the Super Bowl itself, about Drake May's struggles, and then it obviously segued naturally, as it always does, into a comparison between Drake May and Caleb Williams. And so there's a lengthier bite here, Grote, but I think on the back end of it, there's going to be plenty to discuss. Here is Hall of Famer Kurt Warner.
Felt like he was really uncomfortable in the playoffs. I felt like he played slow in the playoffs. And that is probably the biggest thing that I took out of this, is that Drake had an unbelievable year and should have been in the running for the MVP. But when you start to play better defenses, they speed the game up for you. They make you play faster. They make you understand what's going on, set your feet, deliver good throws. And again, there's not a lot of margin of error on the back end. If you're not perfect against a lesser team, you might be able to miss a little bit more and a defender not there to be able to knock it away. And so, it really could be a combination of things, but I really felt like Drake May showed that he was a second-year quarterback, and a really good second-year quarterback, but a second-year quarterback that was a little bit overwhelmed, and the game was playing a little bit too fast for him down the stretch against these good defenses that he faced.
It's funny because, these are the kind of binary quarterback versus quarterback debates that I make fun of when the national shows do them, right? I admit that I make fun of them. But after everything you just said, and after the season that you and we got to watch and break down all year long, I'd come out of that Super Bowl feeling pretty good about our guy, Caleb Williams, versus Drake May. If I had to think about it in that context, I feel pretty good about Caleb. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think you should feel good about Caleb and where he is in his second year. I do believe Caleb probably would have struggled, if he had to play the same kind of game as Drake May through the playoffs. I think the beautiful thing about Chicago is they didn't force Caleb to have to play that way. That they were a run-first team and allowed him to be a complementary piece, which is huge. It's very much what Sam Darnold did most of the year. Drake May had to carry that team most of the year. They could get some home runs with their running backs at times, but a lot really fell on Drake to have to carry them more in the drop back game. And that's a tough place to play against really good teams. And that was for the majority of what they had to do yesterday was drop back. And that's tough against good defenses when you can't bring everything to the table. I think the other thing is, Caleb's ad lib, although Drake is good in that area, Caleb's ad lib is special. The kind of throws he can make with pressure in his face, the ability to elude that pressure and create also gives him, an advantage over, more of a pocket passer like Drake May is. And so you should feel very good about where Caleb's at. But again, I'm not a guy that likes to do let's compare this to this. And, I hear people now saying, this is why Matthew Stafford should have been the MVP because look what he did against Seattle's defense and look what Drake May did. And there's too many things that aren't apples to apples that if we're just going to say, let's just throw this against this and let's, show this guy against these guys because matchups and styles are so important when you're playing against different teams. And, one quarterback may not be as good, but their style or their matchups may be better against a good defense. And now they look better against that defense. And we want to go, see, he's a better player. It doesn't always work like that. And so you have to watch snap by snap, play by play of all these guys and who they are, and then make your assessments from there. But I think New England should be, over the moon with what Drake May did this year, his growth, what Josh McDaniels did with him. They just ran into some better teams than they were offensively. And it happens. I think Chicago should be over the moon with what you guys accomplished. And you guys are, both these teams, I think, are ahead of schedule. And their young quarterbacks made huge improvements in year two. So, fan bases should be excited about both. But we always just have to be cautious because, you have to know who players are. Or, Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, and Devontae Adams, whereas, Drake May doesn't have those dudes against the dudes, from Seattle. And so there's just so many things that aren't apples to apples when we try to compare things like that you try to just look at situation at hand, what's going on, what this player is and has done, and make your assessments from there.
Dan, what was it that stood out to you in all of that you were desirous of hearing that here on Take the North?
It was a lot, and I want to get your take here in a second. But first of all, the meat on that, Kurt Warner was as adept at avoiding the comparison game as Caleb is at avoiding pressure, right? And justifiably so, because I think he laid out 15 reasons why playing the comparison game repeatedly over the next several years is just going to be a fruitless experience. As much as fans love to do it, as much as social media loves to perpetuate that conversation, it's just pointless. And so what you heard was some really grounded, measured analysis from a guy who's got no skin in the game, which I love. He's not rooting for one thing or another. He sees the position through very informed eyes, and he tells you, right? Like there's things to be over the moon about. There are things to be cautious about. There are reasons that Caleb and Drake May are different. You had one this season, in his estimate, Caleb Williams, who was a complementary piece to a run-first offense, and the other who was the engine of what his team needed to do offensively. And so there's all these little sort of nuances to the entire conversation and the evaluation process that we have to be aware of. I've got a little bit more to say on the bigger topic because we've talked about it a few times over the last couple of weeks, but I wanted to get your take on what you heard in there when you're talking about two second year quarterbacks who were in the Duncan race.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what that part is fun. And I think that part is allowed where we compare the draft class of quarterbacks. And yeah, as I have said on the score and on this podcast, it does feel like the United Center Dunkin' Donut race where, oh man, Jaden Daniels out to a big lead, but here comes Drake May now. Oh, and there comes Caleb on the outside. What about Bo Nix? His team is winning like crazy. Poor Michael Penix. He's way behind still in all of
Poor
this.
JJ McCarthy.
Oh, JJ McCarthy. I left out JJ McCarthy. Right.
Yeah.
And he had his car might have been right behind Caleb after the combine. I mean, so the Dunkin' Donuts comp gets more real by the day. I think I do agree with Kurt Warner. It is like a silly exercise we do, and I'm complicit in it. I mean, it's just what we do. It's the nature of the business. But I do believe that, yes, it is fair to think that if Caleb Williams was playing in that Super Bowl, if he's Caleb, he probably would not have been sacked 6 times. I'm not saying he wouldn't have been sacked because Seattle is excellent and that would be taking away from their prowess. Maybe he gets sacked 3 times in that game. And what it made me think too is Caleb Williams himself, his superpower, what separates him, and this can be relevant to the Super Bowl. The Patriots were begging for a big play, and they got a couple of big throws on one series and the touchdown throw in subsequent plays, where they had an explosive play and then the touchdown. What Caleb does to separate himself right now, and he's got a ways to go before I think he's a complete quarterback, is he is capable of the spectacular in a moment's notice, no matter what has happened in the game. And we know 7 fourth quarter comebacks, but that is real. And it's possible that if New England had that's exactly what they needed in that moment.
One of the things that always proved kind of frustrating about the Jay Cutler experience was that he never was able to find it when he was having a bad game, right? Like you saw all the talent, and then like it wasn't like, oh man, Jay's played bad for 3 quarters. Watch out, here comes the fourth, right? Caleb is the opposite, and you just mentioned it, where it's like that is a rare trait where you can really, really struggle for an entire afternoon and just say, hey, it's winning time, and then turn on a switch and be able to put your team in position to win the game you're in. Like it is a superpower without question. And it's going to be really fascinating to hear from people around the league in the coming months, how they see it from the outside. I'm going to give you 2 other acronyms, since we're on acronym Black Friday here, that are going to become part of our discussion here on the podcast over the next several months. The first one is PDAE. All right. Write this one down. PDAE.
Public display of affection.
It's performance disguised as evaluation,
okay.
Right? It's the exact opposite of what Kurt Warner just did, right? Like Kurt Warner just provided he put the slide under the microscope. He analyzed it for a long time. He wrote a thorough report and he gave it to you. That's great stuff. Like that's the stuff I want more of. And we live in a landscape now in the media world where there is morning TV shows that have to produce viral social media clips. And so they dress up their evaluation and they call it evaluation, but we all know it's just performance, right? And there's going to be a lot of that as it relates to Caleb Williams in the months ahead. It drives me crazy, and it makes the audience at large stupider when they go down that path. And so we're going to have to keep our eyes open for what is measured analysis and what is just performance that's being dressed up. The other one I'll give you is analysis by desire. And this relates to that's ABD for those keeping the acronym score today. ABD is analysis by desire. This is what ruined the Justin Fields discussion in Chicago. There were too many people that were analyzing by desire. They had a desired outcome, and so they saw everything through the lens of what they wanted to happen up the road, instead of just being like, no, this is what's happening right now, and we can just take a breath and process it and conceptualize it and figure out what exactly it is, what it means, and how to interpret it. And so those things they're not going away, and I'm not policing it anymore. I'm not going to throw people in, analysis jail for doing these things. But I just want to remain cognizant of it, because it does muddy the conversation up and add noise that isn't there. Like you've talked already about what's coming for us in the offseason in terms of the Bears euphoria. Like there is going to be a segment of people, both in the fan base, understandably, and worse so within the media, that chugs a bottle of Red Bull, takes a bag of Pop Rocks, drops them in their mouth, and then sucks on the helium tank, and then starts giving you their opinion after doing all those things when they're all juiced up. And you just got to guard against that and try to find your way to the stuff that is true, right? And grounded and has perspective and balance and nuance to it. And so hopefully this podcast can be an engine of that kind of thing as we go forward, but it's all coming for us, and it's going to get really loud, as you forecast several times here, because the Bears they're a national thing now. The coach is a national thing. The quarterback's a national thing. The discussion is a national thing.
I do love the concept of desired outcome. That's so good, man. I mean, really, like in broadcasting, fans have a desired outcome. That's why even my desired outcome when Justin Fields was drafted for the Bears was that he'd be great and he's the guy. And I pumped that engine. I thought he was going to be good. But then watching him day after day in training camp, sitting in the bleachers, watching, there's those moments, Justin Fields specifically, where you're like, I think that I'm going to have to overcome my desired outcome because that ain't a starting quarterback in the National Football League. So that's such a good thing. And I will continue to try to avoid, or at least be real, and let the desired outcome be fluid, let it change if it needs to. And I hope that listeners do. And I hope that our fellow broadcasters can continue to do the same thing as well. To see it for what it is, even if we make mistakes along the way in our opinions of, because honestly, I've been up and down on Caleb. I'm all over the place on Caleb. But like, really, like, so it's difficult, but like the jury's still out. Like if you're asking about Caleb, jury is still out, but he's got spectacular in him. He does.
You said it the other day, right? We were going to make t-shirts. It's all on the table, right? Like that was the phrase you used to say that like the range of outcomes is that big right now. What I love is Caleb's at a fascinating stage of quarterback development. This point where you're at, you've played 2 years. Now you're going into the second year with this system and this coach. Like there is a lot here that we're going to learn in the next 12 months about who he is as a quarterback and who he can be, where the true shortcomings are, and whether they will ever be fully addressed, or whether you're just going to have to lean into some of the superpowers we've asked more heavily to get you where you want to go. This is a really cool time in a quarterback journey to analyze, right? And like, so that's why it's going to be really fun on here to use our resources, to use people we know in the building, around the league, to find a little bit more.
Where's that mute button?
An educated understanding of it. I did that purposely. That's the Edward Rooney, right? Rooney. And I apologize for getting a little bit.
Damn it, Rooney.
Up there. But it's good. It's good time. It's going to be a good stretch here of analyzing this whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's continue on with listen to this. As we know, one of the big holes on the Chicago Bears is because of Ozzie Trapillo's injury, because they're not really sure if Theo Benedette is the future as the left tackle. The Bears covered the position fine this year. The Braxton Jones is a free agent. They pretty much told you they're not interested in him as the starting left tackle. So James Big Cat Williams, a right tackle in his life for the Chicago Bears, also a defensive lineman if we want to get really technical on James Big Cat Williams, but he also was on the score. It was also Spiegel and Holmes, and he was asked what the Bears, this offense specifically, what do you want? What do you need in a left tackle?
Now that you've seen a season of Caleb and what the other four guys in the offensive line, what the scheme looks like and what he looks like in it, how would you describe what you want the left tackle in this offense to play like?
Well, you know what? I'm going to say that Olin said it perfect. I heard him earlier in the week talking about, the left tackle position. You're looking for someone that can stand alone. You're looking for a guy that can handle anyone off that edge by himself without needing that chip, without needing that extra tight end in to help to, either widen that guy or tighten that guy to make his angles a little different. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for a guy that can stand alone out there and be perfectly fine.
Yeah, and that doesn't sound too different from what you want from most left tackles, but that's what you need. And apparently that's not what the Bears necessarily thought they were getting out of at least two out of the three guys that I mentioned in Braxton Jones and maybe even Theo Benedette, as successful as a story as Benedette has been.
Well, and as successful as a story as Braxton Jones once was too, right? Like, and so that you have to, again, distinguish between, are you functional enough to start for our football team, and are you a championship piece that gets us closer to winning a Super Bowl? Maybe next week would be a good time for you and I to come up with a list of like 5 or 6 questions that we absolutely need answered about this football team before we report to training camp, right? And left tackle will certainly be on that list. Who's playing left tackle? Who's in the competition? How did they address that position through both free agency and the draft? This is a clear indication that, this is something that's going to be a priority for the Bears until it's not. And so there's some good insight there from Big Cat.
Yep, always good to hear from James Big Cat Williams. We move on here on Listen to This, and our grand finale here is the chairman, George McCaskey, who did not speak to the media at large in this particular year out at Hallis Hall, so we did not get a chance to ask him questions. But one of the people that did is one of our colleagues here from WGN and the son of the great Walter Payton. Jared Payton did get the opportunity to sit down with the chairman of the Bears, George McCaskey, and the thing that I was most interested in hearing about, among other things, was how did George take to Ben Johnson saying F the Packers at the end of the year? The background on that is that George McCaskey does not care for a whole lot of swearing, especially that loudly, that publicly. He didn't want it during HBO Hard Knocks. He understands he's running a sports team, but George does not like the blatant swearing that can go on around a football team or just in life. So Jared did ask him about how he handled all of that. Here's George and Jared.
You see everything and hear everything. So when he was saying what he was saying, it got a lot of media scrutiny, talked about here and there, but I felt like it was a unified message.
We talked before the season, and a couple of things that I shared with him are, if you look at 100 years of history, whether the Bears have a successful season has a lot to do with how we do against Team Voldemort. Not 2-15 or anything like that, but if you sweep, you get a pretty darn good chance of having a successful season. If you split, you still have a good chance. But how that series goes has a big impact on how the season goes. And the other thing I told him was, when you're with your players, you got to be authentic. They can spot a phony. You got to do what comes naturally. So yeah, we talked and we're on the same page.
We're on the same page. Now, we talked, we're on the same page. Now, did that same page was part of the discussion? I accepted that F-bomb, but let's have a discussion to get on the same page. I don't want it again.
That'll be it's a good question. It's one we can further up here when we get I think we're going to get a chance to visit with George at the owners meetings next month, and we'll get a little bit more clarity on how same page they are. Listen, like if George really wants to go all in on the Ben Johnson experiment, then he's got to be the one to rip his shirt off and yell F the Packers after a win over Green Bay next season, right? Man. Like that's the next step here. Are you really all in on this, or are you not? Let's see here. Let's see, Mr. Chairman, how behind your head coach you truly are.
If George cares at all about being super popular in this town, because his approval rating could go near unprecedented territory if he was to do something like that. Like he'd be at 100. Like anything that anybody thought about George early on and the critiques that he's taken, that ownership has taken, that management has taken through the years, that would all be cured. By the way, I admit I'm reading this right from AI because I was not familiar with Team Voldemort. Refers primarily to the group
Harry Potter
Death Eaters, and yes, the Harry Potter series led by Lord Voldemort and dedicated to blood purity, dark arts, and domination. So, so does that mean that the Packers are Death Eaters? Is that what George is saying? I tried to act like I knew what he was talking about on the score. I don't know why I did that. I couldn't just tell people I needed help, but I don't understand.
I'll fill in the blanks for you here because
Adam Szynski's here, everyone.
Yeah,
Thanks, Adam.
Listen,
Hi, Adam.
I've read that series multiple times, and like Harry Potter could not have been more in my wheelhouse. Like
good.
The Harry Potter generation.
Good, we got an expert.
The reason he does that is because in the books and in the films, Voldemort was so feared that people were afraid to say his name. And so that's where they called him "He Who Must Not Be Named" or "You Know Who." So that's what he's playing off of Team Voldemort because he doesn't want to say the Packers' name. I would argue that if he were being true to the spirit of what they're doing, he should say the team that shall not be named. But that's the point. He's close enough. He probably didn't read the books, so that's fine.
I have clarity now. Thank you for that.
Expelliarmus, studs. Expelliarmus.
Neither Jarrett nor George can say the Packers, and I understand that. I mean, they both have Bears blood. That is understandable.
I liked you trying to summarize all that, Grote, via an AI Harry Potter summary. Like that was bold to try to go that route. I'll give you a little Harry Potter background from my end a little bit. During COVID, this is actually one of the only good things that came out of COVID inside our household. My son at the time was learning to read. He was in first grade, and his cousins, who were much older, 17 and 21 at the time, they would get together on house party, which was like the less formal Zoom, right? Like you could get together over video conferencing with people, and they would read a chapter a night of Harry Potter, right? And so like we had nothing else to do, so we would just kind of listen along to them reading that, and then as they finished each book, they would watch the movie, and everybody would put the movie on their respective homes, and then they would watch it while they were together on video conferencing. And so I know a lot about Lord Voldemort. I know what George is talking about there, and there's the background in Harry Potter world here at the Wiederers.
I missed it all, and it doesn't do me good in life to not know Harry Potter. I mean, like I know some of the basics, but to not know, maybe that's what I need to do this offseason. Maybe I finally need to pick up Harry Potter so I get all the references that I've been missing for how long? Decades.
It's wild because it's 7 books, maybe 6 movies, or just the opposite, whatever it is. It was over like 15 years that they put those out. But if you watch them all in succession, just for you, like you'd be able to do that because you wouldn't have to wait for the next one to come out. It starts out very like, oh, this is a good kids movie. By the time you get to the end, you're like, this shit is dark. Like I don't know if this is for kids anymore. And it wasn't, because kids were coming up through the generations, right? And like kids had become teenagers. But when you're watching it at 7 years old and you watch all of them in the same like 6-month period, you're like, holy cow, what happened here? Like this got really heavy really fast.
Would you say that is Star Wars a good comp? Because it like on the surface that might have appeared to be for children too, but far from it. Like kids enjoy it, but they don't get it on the same intellectual level that we necessarily get it, right?
Maybe a decent comp. Like it definitely, by the end, it just feels like a lot heavier and a lot scarier, than it did at the beginning. And you're like, oh God, like I might have a nightmare tonight thinking about this.
Maybe it's time. Maybe I'll rustle up nieces and nephews and we'll gather around the television and watch Harry Potter together. Stud says 7 books and 8 movies for the clarity right there.
There you go.
One more cut here from this mini in segment in podcast. Listen to this. Listening to George, and if there's anything else from George we want to hear, feel free. But the last thing that I had from George McCaskey, just listening to him over multiple, questions of justifiably being asked about this wild, unexpected Bears season and all the words that we've used to describe this year all along on this podcast. I thought it was interesting to listen to, and I had our fine actually executive producer, Adam Stadzinski. I said, do me a favor and find all the adjectives that he used to describe the Bears season. And the adjectives that he's about to spout off are over multiple questions. And I just thought it was funny. Here's George McCaskey.
Magical, improbable, unbelievable, miraculous, maddening at times, exhilarating, exhausting, gratifying, ultimately very satisfying.
I mean, he's not wrong on any one of those words. Not a single one of them.
I love that. I really feel like that probably now is a top candidate for our outro here on Take the North after every single episode.
Wow.
We need to play that segment of adjectives, because if we're not making people feel all of those emotions, then maybe we're failing here on the podcast.
I think you're right. Yeah. And I even left out like divine intervention, miraculous, magical. These we were in there. Improbable, unbelievable, exhilarating, exhausting, satisfying, maddening. I loved it. Like you had satisfying and maddening in a sentence, which is just beautiful. Exhausting, exhilarating. Those are the words that describe this season. But you don't want it to be too miraculous, right? We don't want miraculous, because then that means it's not sustainable. We don't want miraculous.
Well, right. And that you heard the general manager of the Bears, Ryan Poles, and the end of the season news conference say, like, being the cardiac Bears was fun and all, but we don't want to be the cardiac Bears, right?
No, we don't want to be the cardiac Bears.
Like to win by 10 and ease into the locker room from there without needing all this crazy late game drama to be successful.
Yeah, yeah. I think. Oh, here it is. I scribbled down one of the quotes from George. My cardiologist in Chicago had a booming business, or cardiologist in Chicago had a booming business, and that's a perfect way to describe it. I think we've come to the end. Is there anything else that we have on Listen to This here, Dan, or have we exhausted our Listen to This for today?
Yeah, since we've decided to bypass the origin story of my marriage, we're gonna say that's the end for listening to this on this Valentine's Day weekend. And I will remind you again, you started this podcast with Illinois versus Indiana Stadium kerfuffle. We've got Illinois, Indiana on the hardwood on Sunday. This should be the game that settles once and for all where the stadium needs to be.
That's it. That's the way it's being posed. ILLINI, ladies and gentlemen, for that guy of the Illini, Dan Wiederer, also of The Athletic, for Adam Studzinski, our executive producer and Harry Potter expert. I am Mark Grote of The Score, saying thank you so much for watching. Thanks you so much for listening to this, the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.